Hi, thanks for joining us for a video walkthrough. I'm Sarah Traver. I'm the director here at Traver Gallery, and I am here with our featured artist this month, Curtis Steiner. We're going to walk through your exhibition gathering and take a look at the extraordinary paintings you've created for this show. We're excited to be here. Thank you.
I'm excited to be here too. It's such a beautiful space and such a great opportunity to be here.
Curtis, you've sort of outdone yourself. The space is perhaps the most beautiful it's ever been.
Oh.
It's absolutely gorgeous. You've transformed our gallery into this kind of salon that sort of is reminiscent of a European museum in an ancient building or something like that. It's absolutely stunning in here.
I wanted to have that sense that you might take a travel somewhere and have a little visit to another land and just through those doors.
Well, it certainly transports you.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good.
So because of the lighting in here, we're actually going to do this a little bit differently. We'll spend a few minutes just chatting about the exhibition title, the inspiration for this show, and then we'll switch to having the video just focus on the artworks, and we'll be a little bit behind the camera chatting about the works as we move throughout the room.
You might see my hand dart in and out of the screen, but we'll be behind it.
Can you start by just telling us a little bit about the exhibition title, Gathering?
Well, as I was making this work, I thought how they looked like entities coming into, they started to become figurative or like spirits. And I thought these spirits are gathering, there's just this beautiful thing. And then I thought about how I was interested in the light and that the light was condensed. And then I thought, oh, I'm gathering light as well. And then I thought about community and all of the things that word gathering suggests. And so that's how I came up with the name.
Yeah, I think the title to me, and you've touched a little bit on this and other things that you've said and written, gathering suggests this sort of kind of community experience around either a celebration or a loss or anything. I mean,
collecting your thoughts, collecting objects, collecting order.
Yeah.
Just really trying to make sense of the world. And I think gathering is a perfect word for that.
I thought of you yesterday, and the exhibition title yesterday was the solar eclipse.
Oh yeah.
And seeing photos of people in cities in the pathway, all coming together to witness collectively this phenomenon, this
magical light that was coming from the sky that is so rare.
And it really kind of the experience individually transforming people, but also collectively. And I really thought that was such an interesting connection to your show, and that idea of the work kind of reflecting this phenomena that maybe happens out of our range of focus or outside of our, direct consciousness in sort of a subconscious place.
And that's what I'm trying to capture with these watercolors is that fleeting moment, to take layer upon layer and slowly add to it, getting denser and denser and more colorful. And then creating something that ends up being alive and has energy and vibrations. And I think probably very much like what people experienced yesterday with the solar eclipse.
Yeah, well,
we certainly are plunged into that kind of light when you come through those doors.
Absolutely.
Into this gallery.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's take a look at some of the work.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
Let's start at the beginning. I think that this one is pretty well the embodiment of what interests me, what drives me to paint. So I've always been interested in taking hard-edged marks and creating soft and diaphanous imagery. So this is a series of washes where I slowly add more pigment, let them dry, go smaller and smaller and denser until finally it becomes a dark object, either a void or a subject.
It's, frankly, when you see this work in person and you encounter the preciseness with which you've crafted each one of these pieces. It seems so improbable that these are done in the way that you do them, this gestural, fluid painting style, and using watercolors. How did you come to that? Watercolor is sort of considered this, maybe other people are using watercolor this way. I haven't seen it, but when I think of watercolor, I think of this sort of looseness, this sort of ease with the paint, because it's pigment suspended in water. It wants to move the way it wants to move. And here you've created these paintings that are so controlled in a way.
Well, I think that a lot of, I choose watercolor because I think it's underexploited. And those that do abstract imagery in watercolor often choose to be very loose and let the paint move, and then they capture it. And oftentimes they have very similar effects, but it really is, it's the paint doing that and them recognizing it and them keeping it there. Whereas I look at that shape and I think, oh, I wish I could make it myself. So I'm trying to capture that same feeling, this same beautiful kind of wicked pooling, but doing it in a way that I really feel I can take credit for.
So you're building these up layer after layer over long periods of time.
For me, it's very good because I tend to be very compulsive and I tend to work as long as I can, but the watercolor forces me to stop, or at least the technique that I use. So I'll have to often let it dry for a half an hour or so. I don't tend to use blow dryers or any heating devices. I feel like it dries more uniformly if I don't. So but what that does is it forces me to rest my body, and it allows me to continue to work and work to create a show of this size. Whereas when I was drawing, and doing ink work, which there are a few pieces with pen and ink drawings here, but those I won't stop, and then I end up damaging my body. And so it's my friend, this drying part.
Tell me about the choice of frames for this exhibition.
For some people might know that for many years I had a gallery. There was a decorative arts gallery come retail store. I always called it theatrical retail. And I would buy and sell antiques. I juxtapose them with other artists' work and make these happy marriages, these beautiful marriages. And oftentimes people would be coming to look at antiques and they would be introduced to artwork. Or they'd be coming to look at artwork and be introduced to antiques. I think that there's something that putting those contemporary thing next to an antique thing, a thing imbued with a lot of history, helps you look at each one anew. Like it opens your mind to them. I also think that there's this sort of borrowed history here when you look at these different frames, these different ages. We all have a kind of, general idea of when these things came from. Even if you're wrong, you still have this idea. This was in a museum, this was in this period, what was going on during that time. I love marrying the two. And I also think that there is a kind of a quality of framing that one could not possibly afford unless one was very wealthy, that I'm able to bring to this artwork. So there's some very, very high quality works. There's several in here that have old frame makers' labels. There's one from Boston, some from San Francisco, and I've looked these people up, and they're frame makers who are very venerated and were very sought after in their day as being the finest frame makers in the United States.
As I have been living with these objects, really, the paintings in their frames. It's been interesting to me to observe how much they inform each other, how much one helps you see, it brings out something in the other, whether it's the pattern in the wood grain that feels connected to the shapes in the painting, or something in the ornate details of the frame that connects to, a bit of light or fine detail in the painting. They do speak to one another.
Well, this one is a perfect example that's on the screen right now. It's probably the youngest frame from the 60s, but you could see that the old linen, happens to be the same color as the background. The forms and the proportions of the profile of the frame echo the imagery inside, and so they become this kind of copy somehow, or window into the other world. So it allows you to see both, and also suggests a modernist image, an image that might be from 50, 60, 70 years ago. And I'm not the first person to do this. People in modernists would take old frames and frame them. And oftentimes you will see a Picasso in a frame much older than a Picasso. And that was probably his decision. This one also, I think, echoes very much the forms of the frame with the forms in the painting. This painting, too, I feel like it has this wonderful balance between negative space and positive space. I look at it and I'm not sure if the brown part is the subject or if it's the void. Are we looking at this being that's surrounded by this void, or are there two beings attracted to each other and having a conversation?
That's something that happens quite a bit in your paintings, I think, where the negative space and positive space can kind of flip-flop. And you see different things, whether they appear to be receding or protruding from the paper. Particularly, I think, in the line explosion drawings like you see here, that can go both away from you and towards you simultaneously. It's really interesting.
And that's my intention. And my intention, too, that you can that it becomes a much different conversation up close than far away. From 20 paces, this looks like a soft, oval fingerprint. And then when you get closer, it looks like energy and a vortex, time exploding.
These ink drawings are something that you've actually been working on for many years, and relate, I think, in a very interesting way to your more recent explorations with paint, in creating that kind of fuzzy space, that sort of liminal space where things go in and out of focus. From a distance, if you step back, it does almost appear to be this soft, fluffy thing. Yeah. And then as you approach it, you see the precise marks with which it's made, all of the fine little hard edges. Well, and I think also shares this oval that seems to repeat over and over and over and over and everywhere within this work. And it's something I try to express. It's a natural form. I don't measure anything. I never do an initial line drawing. I wouldn't ever use pencil on these surfaces, because then I would either have to leave it there, or if I tried to take it away, then it would ruin the pristine surface. One of the things I love about the paintings is that it has this velvety quality once the pigment gets very dense. But and with this latest work, I feel like I've conquered the subtleness of the edges. So whereas the earlier work
had more of the silhouette was a stronger form. This now comes from nothing, very, very slowly evolves into form.
Yeah, I've been surprised by how many layers there are on these and how far they extend from the sort of central element and how close they get to the color of the background. It's really like almost this infinite gradation.
And I've been doing this work for about 3 years. I number them. So there's the first painting that I felt worthy of numbering is 0001. And then there's this one that you're looking at right now in the center, and that is 0275. So 275 paintings later, I've gotten to be more skilled. I used to believe that you could only, like folding a single piece of paper, get 7 layers on without it getting dirty or mucky or ruining the surface. And now I've gotten to the point where I can go for a long time. And it's because I've become more sure of those lines and understand the delicacy more accurately. And that I mean by the delicacy of the surface when it's wet or moistened, because it really is fragile, and I have to very quickly make this confident oil with a very large brush, or oval, I should say, with a very large brush. And then I just pull the edges out a bit with a very tiny brush. But I don't mess with the surface, with the general area of it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be nearly as pristine as it appears.
It's hard to see on camera just because of the way the camera reads light in here, but the background on all of these is in fact a wash of color.
I sometimes have 1 or even 2, and partially, well, a lot of it is because when I'm painting and I'm creating these and they start to get this beautiful glow from behind, I feel like if the paper was white, there'd be nowhere to go with that. You know, there'd be nowhere to go lighter. And even though it's an optical illusion, if you look at the one you're looking at now, the sides of it are the exact same color as the interior part that goes down the center that looks so much brighter. There is no difference.
It's really amazing. I mean, that central sort of line that carries through the pinch point in each one of those, dare I say, like butterfly forms, appears to be so much lighter than the exterior edge. And it's totally an optical illusion.
It's very exciting to me, and it's something that keeps me pursuing this particular work.
Tell me about these frames. These are beautiful. These are
1920s pie crust frames. These are the largest I've ever seen. Beautiful quality, beautiful San Francisco frame maker label. They're very feminine. There was a point with this work that I was questioning whether I should do this. I was like, oh, you're making it too beautiful. But when I looked at it, I felt like it really served the imagery. It became a really strong thing. And then I started thinking to myself how critical we are in the art world, in the fine art world, of feminine imagery, particularly in abstract art. You know, I always think that masculinity is so venerated, you know, when it's rough, when it's hard, when it's shabby, purposely shabby, like a man would be. And then when you start to have feminine, beautiful, rhythmic, pretty, organized imagery like this, something that looks feminine, then it becomes somehow less respected.
That's so interesting. I wonder where that comes from. I think you're right that we do have this bias against not beauty, but prettiness, like femininity, the thing that is like unquestionably delicious to look at, that just, you know, is the right color combination, is gorgeous and sexy and fine. And
I feel like that is something that we're culturally, popular culture, I think we are trying to tackle that, where being feminine, being gender fluid is really considered, brave, and people are being forced to consider their fear of femininity. But I don't feel like we're doing that within the art world all that much. I think there's a firm grasp of masculine kind of status quo imagery.
Sure, I think we're all accustomed to seeing, hard edge.
Yep. I think really just, if you think of any kind of really butch forms, like think of dirty, dark, again, like disordered, and that those are the ones that are the most respected. But I say let your inner butterfly free. And I don't even, sometimes I see these as insects, and these are the closest I get to being representational. But what I'm really trying to do is suggest the birth of something, changing of something, energy rising. I'm more interested in simpler forms. So you see a lot of these have these double sides, just two ellipses connected to each other. And so, of course we think of them as wings, but they're also like seeds. I treat it just like nature creates things, simple cell division, layer upon layer, and building into something alive, I hope.
Yeah, it's really a distinct difference, I think, from your previous show here 2 years ago in terms of the evolution of the forms. And I think you have, these are more complex in some respects, but the forms themselves are simpler. They are more these repeated ovoid shapes, more rhythmic, more maybe nuanced in some respects. It's fun to see how you as an artist are evolving and the way you see things, or what you're choosing to reflect of what you've seen in the world changes.
I wanted you to feel more movement, more rhythm. I wanted to apply what I do with gardening as well on or flower arrangements, which we have here. I wanted to have that kind of rhythm, that kind of elegance. And also I just started getting, part of it too was these larger works allowed me to pull away and consider them. And I think doing these bigger washes also has moved me in a certain direction.
Should we take a quick look at the flowers that are in the room?
Oh, sure. This is the second week of the show, and this is the second flower arrangement. I'm a gardener, is one of my other passions, and I also used to do flower arrangements for a hotel here in town. But I just love how this lets you see how the forms in my work are echoed in the forms of these petals, how the rhythms, the weights, the patterns are reflected too in the work. When you look at this and you see a real drama going on with all of these. A drama as well as with form as well as with color. There's just such nuance to these petals. Sometimes they're backlit, sometimes they're front lit, and you'll also see that in, I hope, in the work the paintings that I have here that will last more than a week.
Yeah, it's really fun to see that connection between the natural piece in the middle here, and then the paintings themselves. It's really an incredible environment that you've created.
Thank you. Well, it's so fun to have it. And I think for so many people, it's been a pleasure for me to see people reacting to it and just spending, really a long time contemplating this work. And I think it's as much because of the work as it is because of the installation and I think you become saturated in this room, and it's comforting.
It is. It's a really warm, beautiful space, and I think it allows for sort of a sensory experience overall.
That's what I hope.
Yeah.
I've always loved to make environments, and also make it in a way that is unlike what is commonly done. So just being dark here, not having a white box but having a deep, dark room to go into and to just be saturated by and fall into.
Well, Curtis, thank you so much. This is an extraordinary exhibition, and congratulations.
Well, thank you.
We so appreciate you bringing your paintings to the gallery, but also all of your other interests and accomplishments here as well. I think this perfectly ties together kind of you as a painter and you as a person.
Thank you.
Really
Thanks for letting me
wonderful.
do it. I love being here.
Yeah. Thanks all.